From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. Well, with the new year comes new laws in the Treasure State. Starting today, Montanans over the age of 21 can now possess and legally use marijuana at leisure after voters approved I-190 this past November, but they can't yet legally buy or sell it. Well, this means our local law enforcement is making changes to the way they enforce the use of marijuana to adhere to that new law. And as MTN's Andrea Lutz explains, a lot of questions remain as to how this new law will impact communities like Billings, already riddled with the drug epidemic.
Starting today, the use of marijuana recreationally is very much within the rights of Montanans under certain guidelines. But further guidance from the legislature is also still very much needed for police. As a new law rolls out letting Montanans use weed, area law enforcement still have many questions as to its impact.
Our concern is that there's going to be those consequences. There's going to be some type of impact on the community negatively.
But this concern is no surprise. Both Billings Police Chief Rich St. John and Yellowstone County Sheriff Michael Linder came out in October against the initiative, saying drugs are the main driver for property and violent crimes in Billings.
It wouldn't surprise us to see an increase in those numbers that have substance-related stuff.
But the voters have spoken, and supporters say this frees up police to focus on more serious crimes and brings in a new funding source for the state. But Lieutenant Brandon Woolley with BPD says there's still much to be determined with the measure.
And so we're waiting for the legislature to come out with more information on what is going to be a criminal offense versus a civil offense.
Until then, here's what BPD plans to do.
Marijuana will be legal to possess under 1 ounce and under, or 8 grams of some type of concentrate. And so our officers will no longer be, seizing those misdemeanor amounts.
Woolley says combating small marijuana crimes were never a high priority for the department anyway. He says smoking in public is not allowed and will be enforced, and you can't drive with it either. But
we still will be involved in, let's say if you got 4 or 5 pounds on you and you've got evidence of trafficking and distribution, we're still going to seize everything and we're still going to forward through for the county attorney's office with prosecution.
But here's something still to be determined: the use of drug dogs. Woolley says 2 of their drug dogs were never trained for marijuana detection. So it's going to be up to officers to make sure there's additional probable cause before deploying a search dog. In Billings, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
Thanks, Andrea. Supporters say legalizing recreational marijuana will generate much-needed tax revenue. A study by the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research estimated that recreational marijuana could generate more than $43 million a year for the state. Well, a new year will also bring a new president. In just 20 days, the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden will take place in Washington. But as our Joe St. George explains, because of the pandemic, it will be very different from any inauguration we've seen before.
The platform outside the United States Capitol is nearly finished. Press risers have been put up. Fresh paint was applied earlier this week.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
But because of this pandemic, President-elect Biden's inauguration will be very different from his first one as vice president back in 2009. Inauguration change number 1, President-elect Biden telling supporters not to come. While some will no doubt still flock to the National Mall, it will likely be very sparse. No crowd records will be broken this time around. Inauguration change number 2, members of Congress have limited tickets. Usually the area surrounding the Capitol is filled by those with official invites. In previous years, members of Congress distributed hundreds of thousands of formal invitations. This year, each member gets to invite a +1. Inauguration change number 3, no lunch inside the Capitol. In a normal year after the swearing in, the new president dines with members of Congress. That event is now canceled. Inauguration change number 4, inaugural parade and inaugural balls being reconfigured.
I do think that they'll continue to try to engage with people virtually.
Rachel Gloss is a Washington, D.C. based event planner. She says in a normal year, she'd coordinate a half-dozen inaugural galas and balls. This year, for obvious reasons, her usual clients have canceled the cocktails.
Right now, we don't have anything on deck.
And finally, inauguration change number 5 is the one most up in the air. What role will President Trump have? The morning he took office 4 years ago, the Obamas greeted President Trump at the White House. Obama attended his swearing in. Biden inaugural committee co-chair, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester.
At this point, I'm not sure what President Trump will want to do on that day. It would be unfortunate if he chooses not to participate, but I will tell you that the committee itself are working to ensure that people across the country can participate.
Of course, one thing is for sure, when the sun rises over the U.S. Capitol on January 20th, 2021, it will be an inauguration unlike any other. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
Well, for the first time in President Trump's time in office, Republicans in the Senate overrode his veto and pushed through a bill on defense spending against his objections. The Republican-led Senate passed that measure, voting 81-13 today. The $740 billion National Defense Authorization Act determines such things as how many ships are bought and a soldier's pay. But the president refused to sign it because it did not repeal certain legal protections for social media platforms and because it included a provision to strip the names of Confederate generals from military bases. The Senate also failed to advance a measure to increase the COVID-19 stimulus payments to $2,000, a measure that was supported by President Trump and President-elect Biden. Well, telehealth services are off the charts here in Montana. Those who head up the program say visits are up by more than 10,000 times compared to the year end of 2019. MTN's Holly Brantley talks with coordinators on how it can help you stay healthy and how to get access.
Telehealth in Montana, once accessed by 20 to 40 patients per month, now soaring to unprecedented numbers, 4,000 visits per month through Bozeman Health.
Telehealth is not a solution for everything. Sometimes there's still that hands-on assessment that needs to happen.
Louis Mendiola is the system director. He says the 10,000% increase is, of course, due to COVID-19. Now, telehealth visits are widely accessible through most providers. Pandemic waivers also mean insurance often will pick up at least part of the tab. He says if you're skeptical, reach out to your doctor and give it a try.
I think back to the time when iPhones first came out and how transformative the experience was. The first time I used Uber instead of a taxi cab. The next one is the first time that I used these on-demand direct-to-consumer urgent cares. It's a game changer.
So if you're not sure, next time you're scheduling an appointment, you can ask.
Sarah Compton is the telehealth program coordinator. She walked us through online programs used hundreds of times a day across Montana.
So we've got primary care and specialty care, scheduled visits. We have people doing telehealth with the Cancer Center, and especially important for folks who are, especially if they're immunocompromised.
It's also a benefit for people who might have transportation issues.
People who live outside of the Bozeman community and have to drive in for a visit, we could potentially eliminate a drive-in. That's huge for people.
Healthcare professionals encourage patients to maximize the benefits, especially at this stage of the pandemic when case numbers are surging again. And vaccines do offer hope, but are still rolling out. They say telehealth can help us stay on top of our overall health and limit exposure. Meantime, programs are expanding. Through Bozeman Health, you can schedule 2 different kinds of care through digital online platforms. First, there's telehealth. That's like scheduling a regular visit with your doctor. And then there's B2 virtual care. That's a gray area. Now, for an emergency room, you still need the emergency room, but B2 virtual care can help you when the unexpected comes up, like pink eye or strep throat.
Right now, we're seeing about maybe 5 visits a week. So it's not highly utilized, but it's a great option. Again, if you don't want to come into one of our clinics and you just need some guidance on what you should do next.
Well, those B2 virtual care visits help fill the gap between telehealth and the emergency room. There's also a push to keep the insurance waivers for more affordable access to care extended once the pandemic is under control. Crisis hotlines continue to record call levels from people needing help. The crisis text line reported its highest ever number of monthly conversations in November, with more than 180,000. 90% of those conversations were from people 34 years old and younger. Mental health experts say the hotlines are serving new callers. Officials say there's nothing wrong with asking for help. If you have federal student loans, the government has frozen any payments due on those loans through the CARES Act, but federal student loan forgiveness is expiring at the end of this month. MTN's Jessica Nelson spoke with a student financial aid expert, has some advice on what you can do to prepare as you begin payments again.
If you have federal student loans, the government has given you quite a significant break in having to make payments on those loans. But that break is up come January 31st.
It's going to be difficult not only on the borrower side, but also on the Department of Education side. Because basically what they're doing, once this moratorium comes off, tens of millions of borrowers are going to be re-entering repayment at the same time. That's going to be a real difficult task.
Valerie says now is the time to contact your loan servicer and develop a plan to move forward. Don't wait until the last minute because there are options you may not have yet explored.
They're not stuck in one particular plan. They can actually change those plans, when it's deemed necessary within their lives. But they could look at if there's potential deferment and forbearance that go beyond the loan moratorium. Definitely different repayment plans. They could look at potentially, like you stated, in regards to consolidating if they hadn't already done so.
For some borrowers, they may be thinking of increasing their monthly loan payments in an attempt to cut the loan down faster. But Valerie says that's not always the best idea.
I think cash is very important right now. So the more cash that you can keep in your pocket, the better. As long as you're making your payments and you're staying on time with your payments, it's okay to stay at a lower payment rate.
But most importantly, no matter what payment rate you choose, Valerie says keep the payments coming. Because if you don't, it could hurt you financially in other areas of your life.
Defaulting on student loans affects all of your credit rating. So it can affect your credit cards, it could affect your ability to get a auto loan, even future student loans, anything to that effect.
Reporting in Helena, Jessica Nelson, MTN News.
The federal student loan moratorium expires on January 31st. To change or update your current loan plan, you should contact your loan provider as soon as possible. Up next on tonight's MTN 530 News here on Q2, 2020, miserable for many, but a fresh start and a sign of freedom for one family as they found refuge in one Montana city. We'll meet them coming up. And a beautiful and record-breaking day on the links as golfers in Billings ring in the new year with the 40th annual Polar Bear Classic. We'll take you there as well.
Temperatures going up, wind speeds really going up, and rain and snow, well, at least there's something to talk about. Forecast just a few minutes from now.